Well, it is that time week. Welcome to the Sports Bar. The great Shane Williams-Rhodes joins me to talk a little Boise State football. The Broncos coming off their second loss of the season. This one at the hands of Oklahoma State. Once again, Boise State led by double digits, but wasn't able to close out the game due to a poor performance in the third quarter, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Shane, I know that you were at the game. First time in a while you got to attend a Boise State football game due to everything being canceled last year or affected by the pandemic. But first and foremost, really quick, aside from the outcome of the game, what were your thoughts on just being back at Albertson Stadium?
It was good. For me, I guess it was a little bit more dramatic because the last time I watched a game from the stands was 10 years ago on my recruiting visit in 2011. So this was the first time I've ever had the experience as a fan from the stands. So it was bittersweet, but I enjoyed it though, being able to kind of see everything from that point of view and kind of feel the energy from the stands. I was in the end zone, in that north end zone. So, they were rattling the bleachers, everything. It was all go.
Hold up just a second. I mean, we've had you on the Bronco Roundup Game Day show since your playing career ended, but that's the first time you've watched from the stands?
That's the first time. So I've watched, I think it was Washington State maybe. I think that was the game I went to. And I watched the game from inside, but I was on the sideline. So that was actually the first game I was actually sat in the stands the entire game and watched it. And it was a great experience.
Well, what kind of fan are you then, Shane? I mean, are we just going to put Boise State on blast today? Are we going to defend them? Are we going to be understanding? I mean, where are we going to go with this today?
I think we're going to tell the truth. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. Not here, not today.
I love it, man. I love it. I mean, hey, we are sitting here telling a very similar story that we told following the season opener. Boise State looks great for a quarter and a half, and then the rest of the game, they get outplayed for the most part, and they have a tough time moving the ball on offense. So, I mean, as you watch and you analyze this, Shane, I mean, like, they've looked really good at times, and they've looked not good at times. Which team do you think we can better identify with, the good team or the team that struggles so far this season?
I think we're somewhere in between. I think you see this, we said it last week, the UTEP game. We had so many turnovers that you weren't able to see the game for what it usually is. When you have the games like UCF where there's, 2 turnovers, maybe 1, those are the games where you actually have to outplay the other team because there's not that big a differential with kind of flipping the field and things like that. Because, I mean, even if you look at it from this point of view for us, I mean, turnovers were huge because we had a turnover inside our own 30-yard line right after they scored, which led to them scoring again, and it just changed it. That was the last score of the game. That last touchdown, that was a fumble, or that was a turnover, and then they scored right before half. There was no more touchdowns scored. So, that if they don't score there and they don't score, we win the game because no one else scored again. But, even we can drive down and maybe get another field goal or something. So it's that played a huge role. But, I think we're somewhere in between what we've been seeing. But for me personally, I always wrote out that UTEP game because anytime you have a game where the turnover margin is like +5 or +6, it's hard. You got to throw it out. It's just that trumps everything.
It's almost like you have too much in your favor to judge how the team doing a tight game. And heck, you mentioned Oklahoma State's tight or close field position in this last game due to turnovers. Boise State had a few favorable short fields in that UTEP game due to turnovers created, close to the end zone or whatnot. I will tell you, man, I really struggle kind of evaluating this Oklahoma State game, more so on defense than I do on offense. Boise State was poor in the run game on the defensive side of the ball in the season opener, giving up 255. Gave up a few big runs early against UTEP, then shut it down from there. Last week, they gave up 168 yards rushing in the first half. 75 of those came on one run. And then in the second half, they only surrendered 78 yards on the ground on 35 carries. That's a percentage at 2.2 a pop, that you take any day of the week probably if you're a defense. So I don't know. I just have a really tough time, like, kind of figuring out who Boise State is on defense, because maybe it's not as bad as it seems, but at the end of the day, they still gave up 246 yards rushing to Oklahoma State, which is a really high total for a Boise State run defense.
The way I see it is we couldn't stop the run against UCF. It led to a loss. To me, we couldn't stop the run in UTEP either. But what happened with UTEP is because of the turnovers and because of being down so much, they were forced to abandon the run. So now they had to throw the ball, and those throws turned into a lot of picks. So I feel like UTEP technically didn't. I don't feel like we really stopped them. To me, I feel like we just got down. They got down so much they were like, okay, we gotta start throwing the ball. And when they did, it was turnover after turnover. Now you're down by 3 scores, 2 scores, 4 scores, and you have to throw the ball. You cannot run the ball unless you're just trying to run the clock out and lose. So right. I feel like that's what led to UTEP. Because I think I might have said it last week that I didn't feel like we even stopped the run against UTEP. Did we outrush them? I don't know if we did or not, but I don't feel like we had a good outing as far as stopping the run. I just feel like they bailed us out because they had to throw the ball.
Yeah, honestly, Shane, that's not a bad take, because you're right. That game kind of got so out of hand. I mean, who's trying to establish the run when they're down 54-13, unless you're just trying to end the game at the very end of the game and get back to Texas and go home from there. Good point. So, I definitely think there's cause for concern up front. Like, they still have some work to do. It is encouraging that the second half went so well on defense. As I mentioned, only 78 yards on 35 carries. That's a very good turnaround at halftime. They said they made some adjustments. Mm-hmm. Clearly they did. I will also mention they got Riley Wimpy back in the middle of that defense. He was suspended for the first half of that game because of a targeting call in the second half of the UTEP game, which is just unfortunate. So they got him back, and that obviously made a difference as well. When it comes to the running game, again, times it can seem so mundane and boring because you're only getting 2 yards here and 3 yards there and maybe 5 yards here and then 2 yards, But the point of it is it also allows you to possess the ball for a while. And I think that was a huge detriment for Boise State's offense. I mean, Shane, in the final 36 minutes and 26 seconds of game minutes, so you're looking about the middle of the second quarter on, Boise State only had the ball for about 9 minutes. I mean, they got crushed in time of possession, and I know that time of possession never actually won anybody a ball game. But in this case, I do think it helped lose a ball game for Boise State.
Yeah, I'm going to actually go back to that first thing you said about asking about the run. I think actually even the first half of this game, our run game was what it's been. Stopping the run has been what it's been. And yeah. I think, like you said, I think the second half adjustment we made was the best. I think that was the best job we've done all year of stopping the run. I feel like we didn't necessarily stop it, but it was bend but don't break as far as stopping the run. And I think it helped because I feel like in the second half there were at least 3 or 4 false start penalties, and so getting them behind the sticks allowed us to not allow them to do those run plays because they had so many false starts coming in the second half. And so when we got them behind the sticks, they weren't able just to do those run plays that they were doing on 1st and 10. You were getting them to 2nd and 15s and 3rd and 8s. And so I think that played a huge role. And I know at some point, this is where being a fan in the stands kind of came in. I looked over at the stats on the side because, they have the stats inside the stadium.
Yep.
And I saw that the game was the exact opposite. At one point, they had 215 rushing yards, and we had 215 passing yards at 220. They had 60 passing yards, and we had 50 or 60 rushing yards. And I'm just like, there's no way that there's no way you win the game when the other team can just run the ball down your throat. There's no way.
I mean,
and that's what we
found out. Again, another reason why I have such a tough time investing, or at least trying to determine where we go from here with that Oklahoma State game is, again, golly, it just felt like it got away so quickly, Shane. And, I mean, Boise State, again, at that 6-minute and 26-second mark of the second quarter, I was honestly sitting in the press box thinking they're about to blow these guys out. Like, Boise State looked like the more physical team. It looked like they were the team that wanted it more that day. And then, like, at that moment in time, the game just absolutely flipped on its head. And Oklahoma State, for the better part of the last 2.5 quarters, basically did what Boise State did for the first 2.5 quarters, and that was just dominate the line of scrimmage and take over a ball game. And again, it goes back to that George Halani fumble, though, too. I mean, we finally get George Halani healthy. He's ready to go, and he's at 100%, and he coughs one up at a very critical moment, gives Oklahoma State the short field. They go down to score. They get the ball to start the second half as well. You know, Andy Avalos talks about something, and Shane, I mean, I'm sure this is like common football vernacular or whatever, but I just haven't really heard it. Like, I know that coaches emphasize, you want to win those last few minutes of the first half as well as the first few minutes of the second half, because that's when a game can swing. But he really focuses on something called the middle eight, the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. And if you look at the UCF game and the Oklahoma State game, that's your common denominator, and the common domination that is of the opponent. UCF, they score right before half. They get the ball to start the second half. They go down and score. Oklahoma State, they get 2 scores in that final, 3 minutes or so of the first half. They didn't even need to come out and score the second half, because apparently a 1-point victory or 1-point lead at halftime was all they needed. But either way, it is that. How do you? I mean, I guess what I'm asking you, Shane, is how do you control that middle eight? It's not. It's just an interesting approach, because you don't want to give the ball back to basically your opponents with a chance to score, and then start off the second half with the ball with a chance to score. Because that's almost like halftime is a turnover, I guess, right? Like, you give it right back to them. So how do you kind of do a better job of controlling that middle eight?
So, the time of possession thing that you mentioned, I think us having the ball for 9 minutes out of the 36, what it did is it wears and tears on your defense. You're on the field a long time. I don't know how, but we were able to stop them from scoring points with that amount of time of being on defense. It also, on the flip side, gives your offense no rhythm, because your drives are so short. You're not on the field. You're not getting any rhythm, nothing, no momentum, because your defense is out there forever. It was rough, right? So I think that was huge. But I do know that when we were playing, I know we had some times where, I don't know what year it was, but we came out for 3 straight games, and we could not score points. Just our first few drives were always just really dull. So what they started doing in practice is they had a thing where it's called fast start. So we want to get a fast start. So every day at practice, we would start practice off with a drive instead of starting off with like individual and those kind of things. You come out like it's a game, and we're going to do the first drive to start the practice. And the goal was to go out and actually be dominant on the first drive, when we're first starting, before you kind of get the jitters and stuff out. Like, we want to do it. And we did it every day at practice, so that when we got to the game, it was the same thing. Like, when you come out, we got to start fast. We got to already have something going. We got to be flowing. We got to be ready to go. And it helped. It helped. We did it 2 weeks straight, and the first week it was still a little rocky, but by the second week, it kind of helped when you get in that mode in practice where, okay, when we come out, we can't just come out and just kind of, be there. And they even had times where, just like that, at halftime, we struggled coming out at halftime and doing it. So what they would do is they would go halfway through the practice, send us into the locker room, make us wait in there for 5 minutes, have us come back out, and then we would start practice like it was a second half. And, so getting in that mentality, like, when we come back out, we got to be ready to go. We got to get back on it. We got to be efficient coming out. Just sluggish after you get your practice. And you got to come out with more, and you got to be ready. And so I think that's something that they might need to focus on.
Okay, so when we talk about the ground game, though, we really got to focus on a couple of things here: the offensive line and the running backs. Shane, going into this year, I've never had or heard so much optimism about a Boise State backfield as a whole, or as they like to call it, the stable. And like top end talent, it could in previous years it's probably exceeded what they currently have with a Jay Ajayi or a Jeremy McNichols or an Alexander Madison. I do think very, very highly of George Halani, and he could probably put himself into that conversation one day. But when it goes 1 through 6, and I'm talking about George Halani, Cyrus Habibi-Likio, Tyler Crow, Danny Smith, Taquan Tyler. I think I'm missing one more in there, but either way, when we talk about Andrew Van Buren, sorry, of course, he's even higher up the depth chart. When we talk about that running back stable as a whole, a lot of praise and optimism coming into this season. What's the bigger factor right now when it comes to the run game, the offensive line or the running backs?
I think it's a mixture. Obviously, we went again. Last 2 weeks, we played totally different D lines. I mean, we played a team where, they're not as physical, not as big, not as strong. And then, this week, you saw some bigger guys in there. I think this week was more of the opponent we played was better than the opponent we had previously. I also feel like running back wise, let's just say this, like before Helani, let's see all the backs we had. You had Madison, you had McNichols, you had Ajayi, and then Harper. Those are the four, right?
Yep.
None of those four. So if we just remove Helani out of the picture because he's only played one game, those four guys that I named that we've had before Helani, none of them were getting tackled by the first person. If there was hitting the backfield, whether it was Madison running through something, whether it was McNichols being able to avoid the tackler, whether it was Jay being able to do either or, whether it was Harper being able to avoid the tackle, they weren't getting tackled by the first person, which is something George can do. But that is not something that I see, down the depth chart. And I think that obviously that hurt us a lot. So they feel good about the backs, but when you're not doing a lot of live periods and seeing how things go, you're doing a lot of tag off in practice, so you're not able to actually get the look. It's easy to be optimistic, but I don't think we have those type of guys and those type of backs.
Yeah.
And then on top of all that, all four of those guys that I named were guys who didn't need to come out of the game when it was time to go to passing downs because they all could catch. They could all do everything. Whereas I feel like if Andrew Van Buren's in the game, I don't think we're running a screen or, I don't think he's going to be a threat in the passing game. It's kind of one-dimensional. Now, obviously, if Helani's in, I can see something like that. But once again, he's only played one game. And so I think that is huge. They aren't the guys that we've seen in the past, at least we haven't seen that yet. Obviously, I know it takes time, experience, but I haven't seen that.
I truly believe, from what we know and what we've seen out of George Helani, I truly believe, Shane, that he can get there. I think the offense is different, so we can never necessarily expect him to have 1,823 yards like Jay ever did. I just don't think they're going to run the ball that way anymore. It's tough to measure anybody up against Jay's junior season because he was unbelievable. It was arguably the best. You could really say it might have been the best single individual performance for a single season in school history. Jay Ajayi was phenomenal in 2014. I agree with you about George. He really does possess the ability to make him miss. And, it's so funny because I think when you think about making tacklers miss, so oftentimes you think of like brute force and running over people. Mm-hmm. But this is where I think you could explain in terms of setting guys up. I think that if you go back and you look at George running down in the red zone, especially on his touchdown run against UTEP, he is really good at setting guys up and making them miss in those regards to the point where they barely even touch him. So Shane, you were a smaller guy when you played, but you made a lot of guys miss tackles due to your quickness. How do you set a guy up properly so that you can force him to tackle?
For the ball carriers, obviously, so for me, I played running back until I got to my sophomore year in high school. And so as a ball carrier, me personally, and I know this is how, I don't know if this is how everyone looks at it, but if I have the ball, like for me even as a receiver, when I see the ball coming as a receiver, I know where the DB is. So I know what the DB sees in me. So I know where he's planning on going as far as tackling me, right? So I know where I want to get to. I just now need to know what I need to do in order to make him think I'm going where he believes I'm going. So I think a great example would be my first touchdown against New Mexico, right? It was a screen. The ball was thrown.
I remember it well, brother. I was right. I was right there on the sideline for that thing.
So the ball was thrown. It was a screen. They threw the ball, and it was really inside to where I had to run in and go grab the ball. So if you look at it from a receiver standpoint, most receivers would just run and catch it like a slant and just go in because the ball was thrown inside. So when I saw the ball coming, I knew that the DB was going to trigger and attack me as if I'm running a slant because I'm going in to attack the ball. So I knew that as soon as I caught the ball, I was going to drop my shoulder as if I was going to turn on, like I was going towards the slant and then reverse out. And exactly what I thought would happen is what he did. I caught the ball, and as soon as I caught it, I turned my head that way as if I was going to open it up and go towards the slant. He ran in, I ran the opposite direction, and then I don't even think he touched me. He did a little spin around, he turned all the way around, but those are the kind of things that you have to do, and that's what kind of goes through our minds when we're seeing that. And so that's how George does it. So he sees a guy coming, and we see this guy really, because George might be getting a handoff. George might be, waiting on a block to develop. So we see this guy who thinks, oh, he doesn't see me. I'm just going to blast him. And as small guys, me and George, smaller guys, they usually are not coming in just trying to form you up. They want to destroy you. So they're not going to wrap up. So that helps us even more. So they're just coming in and destroy you. So all you have to do is make a move. But if you're not looking at them and you're making moves, then they think they're going to get you. It's game over. I think he does a great job of that. He's setting it up. He knows where he needs to go. And if you're not making making eye contact and they don't think you can see him, they're coming in to blow you up. It just takes one step, and then you just that agility, man. It's huge.
Yeah. That's why I do think, again, as we try to gather all the information that's available to us, and then take that information and try to analyze and project what this team is capable of, I still feel like the jury's out. And maybe that's just standard when we're only 3 games into the season. The fourth will be played on Saturday. But I do feel like George Holani is going to play a big part in this offense because he does things that other running backs at Boise State can't do. It doesn't mean there's not other good running backs at Boise State. It just means that George he just seems to be kind of a tier above with what he can bring to the table. Yeah. One thing about this RPO attack that we haven't seen a ton of yet, Shane, being out at practice, these running backs are catching a ton of footballs. I mean, more so than I have ever seen in my decade of covering the Boise State football team. And we honestly haven't seen that really utilized in the passing game yet, I feel like. When Tim Plow was at UC Davis, his running backs as a collective group would average right around 5.5, 6 catches a game for about 45 or 50 yards a game. And so far at Boise State, that collective group is averaging right around 3 catches a game for 26 yards per game. So almost half of what, Tim Plow was getting out of his running backs in the passing game while Tim was at UC Davis. And he brought that same offense here. So why is that important? Like, why in the RPO, or any offense, I guess, but why in this offense do you feel like it might be important to get those guys a few more touches to make sure, instead of 2nd and 10, you have a little check down in your 2nd and 6, which makes a big difference on how you will call that play because, of how you're going to attack 3rd down. So why is it so important for those guys maybe to get a little more involved in this offense in the passing game?
Because it's just like Christian McCaffrey. Let's use him for example. So you see Christian McCaffrey. If Christian McCaffrey does not get the handoff, are you just going to let Christian McCaffrey go? No, you have to respect him in the pass game, which means a linebacker who might be playing coverage and helping out safeties and corners and playing underneath. They now have to respect that. They have to stay up. They can't just rush the passer. They have to do those kind of things. And I feel like not having Holani the first 2 games probably played a role in that. And it also goes back to what I said earlier on. Maybe these backs aren't the kind of backs who can catch the ball in the backfield that many times consistently, like we've seen in the past. So Halani's now back, who we know can catch the ball in the backfield. So we might see more of it. But I think those are the 2 factors that come into it: is not having Holani and can those other guys be as consistent with catching the ball.
What do you think of the quarterback position so far, Shane? Are people being too critical of Hank Bachmeier, or is criticism warranted at this point? I mean, if you look at his numbers so far this season, they haven't been bad. I mean, his quarterback efficiency rating is at the moment the best of his career. It's one of the cliches that you will hear the most over at Boise State or at football or with football in general. It's that when you win, the quarterback always gets too much credit, and when you lose, he always gets too much blame. But as you sit and you watch this thing as a fan from the stands, with knowledge of having a pretty good football career, what do you think of the quarterback play so far?
I think it's honestly, and I hate to say it, but I don't think it's all on Hank, man. I think you look at his stats. Let's just go here. Hank has 850? Let's say 850 passing yards. So
Okay,
that's almost
right around there.
Like 275 a game.
Yep.
He also has 5 passing touchdowns, and he only has 2 interceptions. And the most he's thrown in the game is 1.
Yeah.
I don't think that's losing you. I don't think that's losing you games. I don't know. I mean, even if you replace Hank and the guy that comes in, if he does this, if you replace Hank and then the next guy that comes in, for him to be better than Hank, he would have to come in, necessarily throw no interceptions and have to throw maybe like 3 touchdowns a game for it to be better. If he comes in and he's throwing 2 and no interceptions, it's not that much better. It's not that big of a difference. I don't know. I just feel like I've seen a lot worse performances from quarterbacks at Boise State, and guys were not getting their, the number pulled and things like that. I mean, I played with Grant Hedrick, who had, I want to say he had 5 or 6, like 4 or 5 interceptions in a game before. And
that Air Force game was a tough one on Grant. I think he threw 4 that game.
We were 3-2, and he still kept his job. And let's compare that to what we have now. We have a guy who's throwing for 275, 1 to 2 touchdowns a game, 0 to 1 interceptions a game, and they're calling for his head. I don't know if that's really the problem. He's not making like huge mistakes. He's making the plays based off of the plays that are being called. So
right,
we kind of got to look a little bit more into it. I mean,
I agree.
Yeah, he's doing. I will say, he's doing what he can. It's not like he's calling the plays and making the decisions.
Yeah. I mean, I do know Hank's got a lot more on him at the line of scrimmage this year in terms of checks and what he wants to do. He does have a ton on his plate, and I mean that we should also probably be understanding that like you're not going to learn this offense overnight and how to operate it overnight. And like, if they had scored 8 more points this year, they might be undefeated. But it's it's just that's not super realistic. And the reality of this situation is they're 1-2 right now, and he has made a couple mistakes. Probably hung on to the ball a little too long a couple times in the second half against Oklahoma State. But I really am. I am with you, Shane. Like I don't think like just throwing another quarterback in there solves all of Boise State's issues right now. And that to think if you could put Jack Sears or hey, we'll throw Taylor Green into the discussion because everybody's raved about him. I don't think that it's all of a sudden it just fixes everything and now you're operating at your optimal offensive efficiency. I just don't think that's the case in this situation. I just think it's going to take time, and I think that when you win 10 games regularly every year, there's just not a lot of time to have patience. I mean, Boise State, in order to make sure they hit the double-digit win plateau, if you don't count the Mountain West Championship game and a bowl game, they have to win out. I mean, they would have to win out throughout the regular season in order to hit double-digit wins, pretty much. And that'll be a tough task, especially given the fact that they have November road trips to San Diego and Fresno, as well as an upcoming game against BYU, and then even looking at the following Saturday, Nevada here on the Blue. We can talk about stats and everything, but I even want to go further into the intangibles and the feelings. What do you think it feels like to be sitting in that Boise State locker room with a 1-2 record? Because that has not no Boise State football player has experienced that since 2005. Which, I mean, these guys were in diapers basically when that was going on.
I feel like we were in that. I feel like I was in that position 2 times throughout my entire career at Boise State. The first one was being 8-5 or 7. Being 8-5. We were 8-5 after all these Fiesta Bowls, after having Chris Peterson as your head coach. We were 8-5, and basically, I remember someone saying we were the worst team in like the last 10 or so years, and so that's rough. 8-5 here get you fired, and so for Pete,
I think about that. 8-5 record means you are one of the worst teams the program has had since they joined the FBS. Essentially, I mean, those first few years in the FBS were lowly, but still, that groups you into like a bottom 5 performance almost. That's insane.
Yeah. And at Boise State, you go 8-5, you get fired, usually, especially if you've been there for 6 years already. And Pete didn't get fired. Pete just said, I'm out of here. 8-5 is not going to get. Pete left. And then the other time that I felt probably in the position that these guys are in was when we were 3-2. I mean, we were 3-2, and we knew we still had to go play San Diego State, who, when we played them, we're up 20-0 at halftime on us on the blue. Like, we had tough games ahead of us. We had,
and it was it was seriously 8 degrees at that game.
Yep,
no joke. It was one of the coldest games in history.
Nevada game at Nevada. I think we won 52-49 shootout. That we had like tough games still ahead of us. We had a New Mexico game where we won by like maybe 4 points. Another shootout, 48-52. Like just all these games. Like, and this was. Before, we were 3-2, and every game we played was just tough. Yeah. So I feel like this team is in that position right now. I mean, you got some good teams on the schedule. Yeah, I mean, you got Fresno, who I've seen play live against the number 4 team in the country this year. And
that's right, because you saw them at Oregon.
The entire time at that game, people are texting me and talking about how bad Fresno's playing because of the turnovers, and every time I'm responding, Fresno is the team to beat on the other side because these guys were in the game the entire time with 5 turnovers. They lost to the number 4 team in the country with 5 turnovers to 1. It's like, it's crazy. They lost by 7 points. And then you got Nevada, who I think what I saw is they have the number 1 QB prospect right now in the country. We got some teams. We got BYU, who's beat Utah for the first time in 10, 15 years. I mean, we got some games ahead of us, but this could be one of those seasons where you win out. You got good enough opponents where you can still put you in a race. I mean, it might not be New Year's 6 worthy, but it puts you in a race for some stuff. It might get you ranked again. You beat some of these teams we have left.
I love the fact that you're bringing this up because, like, while it might seem like the clouds are covering Boise and you can see that they're about to dump rain on the blue over there and this season will just suck, I will say, like, there is still a chance for a bright and shiny finish to this thing. And you're exactly right. BYU is top 20 at the moment. Fresno State is ranked 22 at the moment. San Diego State will probably have a chance to put themselves near or by the time end of November rolls around, who knows what they're capable of. Definitely an opportunity for them to jump into the top 25. Nevada, if you beat them, it's not like in years past. You will absolutely get credit for knocking off Carson Strong and Nevada. They already knocked off a Pac-12 team this year on the road. Cal beat them 22-17. BYU's 3-0 in the Pac-12. One of my buddies asked me, if BYU was in the Pac-12, would they win it this year? And initially I wanted to go, no way. And then I'm like, actually, maybe they could. BYU
or Oregon. Pac-12. Them or Oregon, one or the other.
Yeah. Right? Probably not ready to put them over Oregon. I agree with you. But either way, like they're closer to that discussion than they are the back end of the Pac-12. So I think that there are still plenty of opportunities for this team to get it right. It has to start this weekend in Logan, though. And despite the fact that Utah State has exceeded everybody's expectations so far, they opened up the season with a Pac-12 victory over Washington State. Since then, they've knocked off a kind of a lower competition opponent, and then last week they hung 49 on Air Force. So they've scored 97 points in the last 2 weeks, but it has to start now, Shane. Like, and I think that it has to start in the fashion of not just squeaking by the Aggies. I hate to start like the, hey, look at the scoreboard discussion, but it kind of has to start to give this team confidence that they can go into Provo in a few weeks and beat Utah and go to Fresno and go to San Diego State. Like, I think you need kind of a dominant showing this week in order to spark a fire and give everyone confidence, including the fans, that this season can still be something special. And I mean, seriously, Shane, when you bring up what's left on the schedule, again, New Year's Six is let's put that off in the distance right now. But still, a very, they can still win a Mountain West title. And if they do that and they run the table, don't know how realistic it is, but if they can, hey, there is still a special season within reach.
I got two things on that. So first is I've talked to some guys over on that Fresno staff because I played with quite a few of them and been coached by quite a few of them. Yeah. And they feel good about the team they have. I mean,
I bet they
feel
do.
Really good. I don't blame them. They have the guys. And the good thing, I think, against the Fresno opponent is that their strength is their receivers. And right now our strength is our DBs. So I'm hoping that plays a huge role for us in that game. But then on the flip side, I'm looking at Utah State this weekend. Yes, they scored 97 points. Obviously, we've scored a ton of points too. But our points that we've scored doesn't compare to theirs because I'm looking at the yards. We're averaging 300 yards or so on offense. They're averaging 500. So they're not scoring off of short fields and turnovers. They are driving the ball. So This is going to be interesting to see how this pans out because don't just look at those points because those yards, that's a huge difference in yards. They have 200 more yards in offense. I mean, hypothetically speaking, that's about 3 to 4 drives depending on how good the kick returns are. So
yeah,
I think we got to look into this Utah State team offensively because they can move it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm honestly really impressed with what they've done so far. They have absolutely exceeded expectations. First-year head coach Blake Anderson coming over from Arkansas State. He brought his quarterback with him from Arkansas State, and he's had some nice success so far this year. Sometimes they rotate in another quarterback that actually grew up in LeGrand. He's like the more athletic, dual threat type of guy. But this won't be a pushover. They have one of the best wide receivers, not just in the Mountain West, but in the country. You'll better know him as number 13 on Saturday. This is where I will say I have a little bit of confidence that it's a good timing for this matchup when it comes to Boise State's ground game as we kind of start to wrap this up, almost how we started this podcast today. And they're a little smaller up front. And I think that this Boise State offensive line, talking with them this week, talking with George Halani this week, they're not going out there and providing any bulletin board material, but they have all acknowledged that Utah State does have a little bit of a smaller front. And so I think now would be an awesome time on the opening drive of the game. I'm not predicting it's going to happen, but I've covered the team long enough. I remember the years where, if they struggled a little bit, they would get back to just trying to establish the line of scrimmage on that first or second opening drive, with 7 run plays out of 9 on the opening drive. It would just be, I'll wait and see. But now wouldn't it be a bad time if you think you can dominate the line of scrimmage at 10 a.m., come kickoff, an early kickoff in Logan, to just come out and assert your will early on and then, adjust from there?
Yeah. I think this is a chance to build some confidence because still to this day, this year I've not seen our ability to run the ball. So use this game as a game to build confidence and put some good stuff on tape. We still don't have anything good offensively as far as running the ball good on tape. I mean, we aren't even hitting for explosive plays, just nothing. We got to get it going. I mean, every time our running backs are touching the ball, they're getting hit in the backfield, which I know obviously that is not their fault. And I know we hit on that a lot today that the guys can't make the first person miss, and they should. But obviously you should not. I mean, honestly, you should not be getting hit in the backfield probably every time you touch the ball. So I think that's something we got to focus on it. We know we can throw the ball. I got a question for you though. Is number 13 better than number 2 on the Broncos though?
Heavens no. I mean, I don't even want to disrespect him, but I'd have a tough time admitting anybody's really better than Khalil Shakir right now. I think Oklahoma State did a good job of keeping Khalil in front of them and also swarming to him when he got the ball against them. Didn't have the typical amount of yak yards that he's had or that he had the first couple of games. of the season just this last week. So I'm still very confident that Khalil is one of the best in the country. I will say I might give Utah State's, number one, a little bit of advantage in that he can pop the top off of a defense. And I'm not saying Khalil can't, but that's just a little bit more of his forte versus Khalil, who is get the ball in his hands and let him make some magic happen. So, yeah, Khalil was good again. 13 targets last week. I would say the target reception percentage was definitely lower than he's seen in the last few games, but 8 catches on 13 targets for 78 yards. Still a pretty good day at the office for him in this offense, especially because they were so limited again over those last 2.5 quarters of the game. If you look at this, Steph Cobbs, they missed him last week, in my opinion. Davis Cutter, yes, the son of Dirk Cutter, stepped up, first receiving touchdown last week. But I will say without Steph, all of a sudden the cupboard did seem a little bare. And still looking for C.T. Thomas to kind of show up. And I'm not even faulting him necessarily for that because he hasn't been on the field a ton, Shane. I mean, he played 9 snaps by my count against UTEP. And the only reason why he had such an escalated snap count against Central Florida, which I believe was 30, was because Khalil Shakir was so limited in that game, and he only played 20 snaps in that game. So looking for CT to kind of show up. He had a catch in every single game, almost dating all the way back to like the middle of his sophomore year, and he was held catchless last week. So that's when you go almost 40 games with a catch and then you don't have one. I don't know how you get the ball in his hands, but you probably figure it out this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I think you actually called that the cutter. I think on the pregame show you said that tonight would be the night that he has his first catch and maybe he might get in the end zone. So that was a good one. I do want to give you your props on that.
I appreciate it. Well, only reason why I said that is because, again, I know that like first 2 games combined, he was on the field for 30 snaps and didn't have a single catch. So, anybody could have predicted that one, in my opinion. Like, you play that much. He was a little more involved in the run game than the typical pass game. But anytime, you play that much and you don't have anything come your way in this style of offense, which wants to involve a lot of people, you feel like it's a matter of time. They have a receiver go down. It pushes him to the top of the depth chart at that Z receiver position. And, rest is history. He was good, especially in the first half. He admitted he did have a key drop on a 3rd and long in the second half, which honestly might have been the difference in the game. Like, I hate to put that much on that one play, but they just needed a freaking first down so badly in the first half that might have been the difference.
From the stands, I thought he caught the ball. Yeah. Honestly.
Well, it was. Hank made a nice throw between a couple of DBs. It hit him in the chest, and then all of a sudden, you see that thing pop out on the ground, and now Boise State's running the punt team on the field, and you're thinking, oh no, here we go again. They run 8 plays in 19 plus minutes of game action. I mean, that just crazy. I honestly don't know if I've ever seen that before in my time of covering Boise State. That's how unique that whole scenario played out. We like to do this, Shane, and we don't hold anybody accountable for it. But how do you feel about this game? I mean, seeing some of the reaction on Twitter, fans are starting to acknowledge what they never previously even thought of. Like, how can you prepare yourself if it doesn't go well in Logan? And I don't want to necessarily ask you that question, but how confident are you that it will go okay in Logan? How about that?
Where I stand, I think. So, is this our way? Are we transitioning to some predictions right here? Just want to clarify that.
You're picking up what I'm putting down.
All right. Before we get into this week's predictions, though, I do want to point out that in the stands this week, I was feeling myself. Actually, I told the people around me, that I went to the game with, that my prediction, on the podcast was 21-27 Boise State, and we had the ball going in to score. Yep. If we score. And that game is over. It's 21-27 Boise State.
Now, here, the score you're talking about, too, by the way, J.L. Skinner should have scored the game-winning touchdown in that game. Riley Wimpy forces a fumble. J.L. picks it up, runs it to the house. It looks like Boise State's going to take a 27-21 advantage if they add the PAT. Very, very good call, my man. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Very good call. You should have called the exact score of the game. That's pretty impressive. Going back to that play, just unfortunate. You could even probably call it unfair. The officials are supposed to let that play out, especially when J.L. Skinner is running with Riley Wimpy by themselves at the 20-yard line with no Oklahoma State player in sight, which means the officials aren't blowing the play dead because they worry that somebody's going to be physically harmed. They blew the whistle, they called the play dead, and instead of that go-ahead touchdown, Boise State had it out near midfield, and they still had to drive down and get points. Missed a field goal. We know how that turned out. Boise State's sending that play into review. They're going to hear back, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything, Shane. And they know that, and that's why that pill is so tough to swallow. They're going to probably get information back that says, yep, the officials made an error. A couple of them in that game, for that matter. But all we can say is we're sorry. That's pretty much it. They can't go back and they can't replay the end of the game. They can't bring Oklahoma State back to the blue, give Boise State a 27-21 advantage and put 3 minutes on the clock. They can't do that. So it's irrelevant. But very good call, my man. You should have called the exact score of the game.
I mean, they call me Sports Book Shane, in some of these parts.
All right. Well, Sports Book Shane, what do you got on this game then?
All right, man. This is what I got for you. I know they got a high-flying offense.
Yep.
DBs look great, but we're gonna struggle a bit on defense. I know we've seen such a dominant performance from our defense in the second half. It's just gonna be a different type of vibe. Oklahoma State's been struggling all year, as we saw. Yep. If you take the second half of the first quarter and the whole second quarter out of the entire game, Oklahoma State never scores any points. So let's just let's just remove that. I think it's gonna be 31-35, Boise State.
Okay, so you're calling a close game. Boise State favored by 9, Logan. The over-under on this thing, despite that 10 a.m. kickoff, is 70. That is a lot of points. They obviously think the Aggies and the Broncos are morning people.
I think I gave you 66? Yeah, I think I'm 66. We don't cover,
but a high-scoring game.
I think we need to start keeping a tally on this. I think we just need to determine on if we're gonna, cover it. If they're gonna cover or not, we need to have a little
I only got a pen on me, Shane. I wish I had a pencil so that if you were wrong, I would just erase it and we could pretend it never happened. But we'll give
I got Aggies covering Boise State winning. Aggies covering Boise State winning.
I think Boise State wins, and I mostly say that because I like people that listen to our podcast. And, you're just not going to make any friends if you pick against the Broncos, right? I really do think that they get a win, though. I do. I think that they go down there. I almost think it happens semi-comfortably. I'll go by 11. I'll go 40. Okay. I'll go 40. Kind of like your 31 because I do think Utah State's going to score some points. I'll go 42-31.
Okay.
Boise State covers. They tip the over, and all is happy in Bronco country once again. Coming back to the blue the following Saturday against Nevada for a big homecoming game. What's going to be on the breakfast plate when the Broncos kick off on Sunday? 10 a.m. What are you thinking, Shane?
Man, I'm going to be working with some kids training, but at my gym, it's Boise State game day. We're going to have that thing blasted on the big screen. We'll have the music blasted on one side, the TV showing. It'll be on mute, but, we'll be watching it for sure. I'll watch that till about halftime from the gym, and then, we'll head home. And hopefully when I get home, we'll be up coming out of halftime and we get a fast start because I don't think I can watch the game like last game.
Yeah, got to do something.
Or like UCF,
Right. Negative total yards in the third quarter for Boise State against UCF. Only 3 total yards in the third quarter against Oklahoma State. Got to do something about the third quarters. Get off the number 3 in the third quarter. -3 +3, get off the number 3 in the third quarter.
We have Shane, 0 yards.
What's that?
So that's just 0 yards in the third for the year.
Yeah. against the two teams that are legitimate competition on your schedule. Obviously, there was the UTEP game in between, but yeah, if you combine UCF and Oklahoma State, you are working with 0 net yards on offense in the third quarter. Got to do something about it. Those are your 2 losses. Fix the third quarter, fix the ground game. I think Boise State comes back to Boise feeling pretty good about themselves by early evening on Saturday. But Shane, been a lot of fun, man. Bronco Roundup Game Day show, kind of a unique schedule this week. We actually have a show 6:30 to 7 on Friday, and then early Saturday morning we're 9 to 10 live. Will's going to be in Logan, but we're on 7.2 and streaming online at KTVB.com. So there's some golf. We couldn't make the mothership work on Channel 7 this week. But either way, Shane, we appreciate it. It has been fun. You and the family enjoy game day, and we'll see you back here again next week right here on Jay's Sports Bar, serving the Idaho sports community.